Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. So we have left off in the last video. We were just in this main.ui file, so that you have saved. We didn't do that much, but we are gonna just review what we did really quickly. So we have essentially just covered what the Qt designer is like pretty quickly. I guess we have covered that, and we have mentioned some things that you can use from the menu bar right here, which is this view thing that you can pop on and pop off some of these things, like property editor for every property that you have. Okay, let's just put it on the side. That's right. Okay, so I've said that the only windows that you're gonna work on within this view is the widget box and property editor. Mostly these two. Yeah, I don't think we are gonna use more than these two, at least for now, unless I have come up with some crazy things. I mean, there is just resources browser. You can use PNGs, you can add PNGs from here, but you can add those from the code. I prefer from the code because there is more flexibility in there, so you can be more choosing. Okay, so I started my recording, yeah? Okay, yes I did. Okay, so we have made some simple things. We have made a window, a main menu window. In this menu window we have a tab widget, which is this one. If you select it here, you see in this object name tab widget. This tab widget has two tabs. The first one has the table that shows all the students. What is the is the stuff that it has? Okay, I think it's disabled, right? Okay, what is it? Up corner. This is some problem here. Okay. Yeah, I have probably just forget and disabled it. I don't know how. We did that yesterday, I guess. So auto scroll. So we're just gonna do our stuff. You wanna check in here. Auto scroll, key navigation, show drop indicator, drag enable, drop OK, drop enable, row columns, selection mode. Okay, this is it. Yes, it's horizontal header visible. You can change this on the code as well if you want to, but since we are working in the designer right now, we are gonna just change that and work with it. So we have the main window. In this main window we have a tab widget, which has two tabs for now, one to show all the students and one to create, delete, update a student. Okay, the first one has a table. This table we have first name, last name, birth date and enrollment number. Now we are gonna move on to the second tab. The second tab is supposed to create or to help us or to give us the ability to create, delete or update a student. Now all it has is two of these line edits, which have some background text that he disappears when you start writing stuff on it, and you have this date edit. I guess that's what it's called. Yeah, this date edit that I have made or I have dropped up in here from this widget box. Okay, we have talked a little bit about these widgets and said that each widget has properties and those properties can be changed from within the property editor, hence the name. So you can choose this line edit and change any property that you want. Just take some time and look into some things that you can change for each of these widgets. So each widget has actually like unique properties for it. There are maybe some, for example, shared properties like the width and the height and the horizontal and vertical policy or whatever, but there are some specific things to specific things. Yeah, that's my joke for the day. Okay, so let's move on. So now we have two line edits, first name, last name. And for by the way, what we are doing here is creating the form that we are gonna need to create a student. Okay, so what are we gonna need to create a student? So always ask a question if you don't know what to do next. What do we need to create a student? We need forms. We need to give it, for example, the first name of the student, the last name. We need to give it the birth date, which we have this for, and we need to give it the enrollment number. Okay. Oh no, the enrollment number is getting auto-generated by the database, so we aren't actually giving it the enrollment number. We are getting it from the database after the user gets created. So I'm gonna just show you how that happens. So all we need is the first name, last name, birth date. So we have actually got all the things that we need. So let's just select all of these three and let's change some of their shared properties like we've said before. So they all have the width, so we can have 400 of that, and they all have the height, so give that 50 on the height, and let's align them a little bit so they get aligned. Okay, that's another joke. So let's I'm gonna put these in a group box just after some time, but let's just see what we're gonna need next. Okay, so in order for us to create a student from this form, all we need to have is a button to push, which is gonna be named create. So we are gonna need a button. This is the button that we're gonna create, push button, or that we are gonna need. But let's just go to filter and do button. This is all the buttons. For example, like you see, they are being selected as buttons, or they are getting this widget box is getting sorted by this name that's in here, which is buttons. We just have to create a button and change its name. So let's say create. Okay, so now we have the user interface we need to create a student, but is that enough to update a student? Okay, so you might say that all we need to update a student is the first name, last name, and a birth date, because all that the database needs, right? No, that's not what it needs. First of all, you don't know what student to update. That's first. So you're gonna say, oh, you're right, but how are we gonna do that? So you're gonna just need another thing, which is, for example, you have to understand first how a row gets updated on the database. I'm gonna just show you that now. Okay, this is just the terminal and some random things that it gives us. So let's create something. So let's name this teaching update. So I'm not gonna save this, but let's just show. So in order for us to update something on the database, we need, for example, like the primary key of that thing. So let's say we have students, the students table, okay, and this table as for example Muhammad, or as Ahmed, for example Ahmed issue as first name. It has, for example, his, what do we have here? Ahmed issue as his full name, for example. Let's just say we do have that. So first name, last name, and we have the birth date and the enrollment number. Okay, so we have the birth date, which is for example 2001. Okay, this is by the way the Moroccans birth date. So Ahmed issue, I don't know if you're gonna get that joke, but yeah, it's pretty hilarious. We don't bother putting our real birth date whenever we sign into something. So Ahmed issue, we have 2000. Okay, that we have the birth date, the first name, the last name. Now we need to have the enrollment number or the primary key. The key should we put? Okay, we can put the key first here. So number 1, and there is another one who has a number 2, and he has Karim Benzema. Okay, we have gone crazy here, and he has this 1 9 3. Yeah, this one is really old. We should not have this one in the Dojo system, but it's okay. We're gonna give him a try. So Ahmed issue, we have, okay, so we have 2 rows right now. In order for us to update one of these, we need to have something specific to each of them. So we can identify them by whichever column that they have. So what I mean by a column, 1 is a column here. Okay, so any value for a specific row in a database. For example, the first one here, we have 1 Ahmed issue and the birth date. Okay, so 1 here is the primary key, which we said we are gonna use as the enrollment number, but let's just think of it right now as the primary key. The primary key is what's so far identifying what we have used to identify, or as a primary key, hence the name, to identify each of these rows. For example, let's say you have 2 students named Ahmed issue, but the birth date is different, the picture is different. You have 2 completely different people, but they have the same name. How could you identify them? You can say, for example, like we have different for example, we have different birthdays, we can identify them by that. But what if they have the same birth date and the same name? So now you are getting the picture. So now that's why we are using these IDs as primary keys, because they are consistent, okay, and they are unique. They are auto-generated by the database, so it saved us some headaches after some problems that the developers had before, which I have told you before that I didn't actually know if this was the problem that they have to face to create these primary keys, but I'm sure that they've come to this problem in their journey or something like that. So now you understand that the primary key is what we are using here to identify each row of our table. So let's say I want to change the first row. I'm gonna do, for example, update, for example, student update student set, I guess, set first name. It's been a long time since I wrote a query. Update student set first name is equal to this, I guess. Last name is equal to, last name equal to this. Birth date is equal to this. And you do where, the where clause. Okay, so you do where, for example, student ID is equal to 1 or 2, for example. Let's just say 2. So this is our query. Update student set first name is equal to this. So why am I using this ampersand s is in the code you actually don't have to. Okay, so let's just explain something. In the code you don't know what things. Okay, I don't know how to explain this. So when you are coding, you aren't gonna put a specific first name or a specific last name here. You want this program to work with any name or last name that the user gave it. So you have to have some formatting data so it can stand for these last and first names, okay? And these data eventually, even these two you shouldn't have here. So you could have this s. Okay, so when we come to create our code, in our code we are gonna just do, for example, like we're gonna create our connection, which is connect to DB. I'm not gonna connect to DB, I'm not gonna talk about this, but from our connection we can create something called the cursor, and the cursor is equal to connection dot cursor. Okay, from this cursor we can do from our function. Let's say this function is update, for example, update student. Okay, so this function should have something like cursor or self cursor, because okay, if this is in a class it should be self cursor, self connection, and this is gonna be self cursor, for example, is equal to self cursor dot execute. We are gonna execute some query, and this query, for example, we should just create here or import it from another folder, which we are gonna do just in later videos. We are gonna put these queries in a separate folder because we are gonna have a lot of them. So let's say this query, okay, so execute this query. So this variable, this is just a variable which has a query as a string. Okay, this is Python, by the way. Okay, so the query should be, for example, yeah, update, which is basically this one. Let's just copy this one. Let's make this a little smaller and just okay, so we have a query which has this. Okay, now when we are gonna execute this query, you are gonna need something called the self.connection.commit, so we can commit the changes to the database, so it can actually save them. So this is what commit does. If you do execute something on the database without the commit query or the commit statement or this expression right here, the commit function is a function. So it's a function that this connection has. Okay, if you don't do that, you're gonna close and open the application and still find the changes are not being made. Okay, now it's still gonna give us an error. Okay, why? Now we have said update student first name. We have a something called string formatter. You can look that up on Google or your favorite search engine, or DuckDuckGo, or whatever you want to choose. So we have to set the first name, the last name, the birth date, and the student ID, where the student ID is equal to %s. So now you have given it nothing. So you have given it a query, some field to change based on the student ID, which is not specified. So now you need to give it the data. The self cursor execute function has something. You can take more than one argument, for example, and the second argument could be the data. Okay, this data is what actually gonna have to execute with the query. For example, let's say the data is a variable or by the way, this data should be a tuple. Okay, so a tuple in Python could be written as something like this. Okay, so it could be written like first, second. Okay, so it should have a comma. Even without these parentheses present, this is still a tuple, just in order for you to understand. That's all why I'm explaining this. Okay, so the data like here, if we see, or if we look again in this query, it needs the first name, the last name, and it needs the birth date. Okay, you're gonna say this is all we need to change, so we are okay with the data. Still, this query is still requiring us to specify another thing, which is the student ID, and you are gonna do that by order. Remember to always do this by order. Okay, and the student ID. And by the way, another thing, if you have, for example, a tuple who takes only one argument, don't do this. This is not a tuple, okay? This is just a variable. You have to make sure to have the comma in your tuple, okay? Unless it's not gonna work and it's gonna give you some weird error that you are not gonna understand, or you are not gonna know where it came from. But just try to have that, and if you are curious enough, so you can try to have it without a comma, just to see the kind of error that you're gonna get in your specific query. It's always changing based on what you have, so just in order for you to have some experience with that and you to be aware of that. So now we're still gonna have an error. Now we have given it the first name, last name, birth date, and student ID, but where did we get this first name, last name, birth date, and student ID? Okay, so you can say, if this is a method in a class, we can say, for example, we need the self, the first name, the last name, the student ID, or the birth date, or student ID. This isn't actually how we are gonna do it, but it's okay for you to know that a function can have parameters, which is just the function requiring some arguments to be given to it. Unless that happens, it's not gonna run and it's gonna give you an error. So it's gonna say you have not given me enough arguments, or something like that. So what we are gonna actually do in this application is to do self, for example, first name. If we change the object name, and this is the object name that we choose for our what? For our widget from the designer. So for example, if we have made this line edit, for example, line edit first name, we can just come here to our code. Let's just assume this is our code, and let's delete this line. We can just do, for example, first name self dot line, how it's written, line edit first name. Okay, and get text dot text in order for you to get the text, and you just have to save it in a variable. For example, let's say first name. Now you have this first name variable that saves the data that is being imported from this line edit first name with this function. So the text, I guess, is the function that we are going to use to get the text from here. But I have just tried to explain some things with this file right here, but we are done from this, so let's just move on. Okay, so let's just review what we have actually came here to teach, because I forgot about that, I guess. So what we have, okay, so we explained the update query and how we're gonna how the update has been done in the database. So let's just close or just leave it. So now we know that we are gonna need a key in order for us to identify the row or the student that you are gonna change its data. So we need some kind of a line edit in order for us to give it the number of our student. For example, we can have a line edit, or we can have something called, I guess, number, LCD number. No, yeah, we can have LCD number as well, but we can have, for example, I guess spin or something like that, spin box. Okay, so this spin box, you can give it any number you want. So if we do forum review in whatever one you want, so let's just try this one this time. You can have this spin box up to okay, 99 is the most number you can give it, but you can change that like we said. Each widget has properties, and this property editor gives you the access to change those properties. So we're just gonna move down here and let's say maximum number 99. Let's just have this long number. Okay, so now if we do form review again, we should have it here. So we can write something like this. Okay, so this is enough for students for the whole universe, I guess. Now it's okay. We have a spin number. We can increment and decrement the number, or we can just write the number ourselves, or the ID or the enrollment number. So we could have something besides this, for example, as the enrollment number. So we have something called the label, so we can have some text in our application. So like you see, this is just simple text which you can change from the code if you want, which also have properties because it's a widget. So text label is we're gonna change this to enrollment number. Okay, now this spin box makes sense to the user. This is an enrollment number. I can give it enrollment number for our students in order to change that. And I need to have another button. We can just copy and paste this to save us the trouble of having a duplicate of this. So we can just call this update button or update. And for the delete, we can just have the another button and name it delete. We have nothing to lose, just delete. I'm sure we are gonna need this button somewhere, because we have the delete in here. So I'm just making 3 buttons. Okay, now I have the spin box where I can give it. So let's just review. Let's do review, form review in plastic style. I can give it. Okay, there is some noise. Let me just cut this thing in this. This is another video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In next video, inshallah, we're gonna continue.